Hey folks, welcome back. I've got a skill today that can help you improve the way you control your golf shots on the golf course that hopefully can help you make better decisions and lower your scores without changing your golf swing. The skill that I want to dive into today is the decision that we make around what to do when we're in between clubs. Now, that means different things to different people, but I'm just going to use round numbers for the example. And let's say that you have 180 yards, or I'll use smaller number. Let's say we have 150 yards to a pin, and that's a carry number. And you have an 8-iron that carries 155 yards, and you have a 9-iron that carries 145 yards. Now there's a course management component to this, which will be a separate video, but let's say, so we have a club that carries 155, we have a club that carries 145. How do we get that club, or what do we do to get something to carry 150? I'm indoors right now, I'm in the off season, but we're going to talk about a way that we can start to manage how we make the right decision on what to do when we're in between clubs. And the easy thing that we're going to do is we're going to test it. So let's dive into it. So some comments that I get a lot from golfers when they're in between clubs, I hear things like, I take a little bit off it. I make a 3/4 swing, or they go with the lesser club and they hit it harder. And I believe that those can work, but with a little bit more questioning, the thing that I often find out is people do that on a one-off basis and they've never really tested what actually works for them. So what I'm going to go through today is the different options that we can look at when we're in between clubs, and I actually did some testing myself, and I'm going to show you my breakdown. And the thing that I know for the years I've been playing golf, I do not like swinging slower. So for the player that says, oh, I'm just going to take a little bit off it, that normally doesn't work for me. I make very poor contact. So I tend to be a player that I still want to swing at, we'll call it full speed or 100% speed. So I think that's probably one of the first ones that you need to figure out that you can do a little bit of testing. But let's assume that we have that, or even if you don't, here's where I want you to start. The thing that I look at is, number one, I have my full swing yardage, okay? And the club that I have today is I have my 6-iron. And so I have the yardage, and more specifically, the speed that I swing that 6-iron. Because more than anything, if we're looking to get a club to fly slightly less, we should see a reduction in club head speed. Then as a result, we should see a reduction in ball speed. So the number I'm isolating today is actually club head speed. So that's what we're going to test to see if it actually fluctuates a little bit as we go through this test. So number one, I have my full swing, normal 6-iron. The next shot that I've experimented with is I have a choke down 6-iron. And for me, and we'll talk about a little bit at the end, this is one that I really like to do because it's one of the easiest variables, and a lot of other things stay the same, right? So when I grip my 6-iron, I grip it at the end of the grip, and then now when I look at choking down on it, I'm looking at going down, let's say roughly 2 inches. Here I've got a spot on my grip that I go down to, and then now just choking down a couple of inches, and I'll show you if that actually has, as we test it, a reduction in club head speed. Now the first thing we'll say about this, because a lot of people tell me that they feel like when they choke down the club it becomes too short. Well, I have my wedge here. This is my 54-degree wedge, so this is my sand wedge, right? And if we compare the length difference, if I grab my full length 54, it is the exact same if I were to choke down on my 6-iron. So in terms of players saying the club is too short, I don't make very good contact, if you can swing your full swing wedge, you can choke down on a mid-iron or a long iron, or especially even then a short iron, to get that shorter club. The reason why I like this one, the shorter the club, in theory, the shorter we're going to swing it, because the club travels a shorter distance, because the club is shorter. Another way that we can look at it is, so number two would be the player that tells me that they want to swing at 80% speed, right? So a player thinks that they have the ability to just say, okay, I know what 100% feels like, so I'm just going to swing at 80%. I've tested that one myself. It is not very good. It's not even worth putting the numbers up there because it's all over the place. But I guess for you, it's something we can test. And then the last one is me making what I feel is a shorter backswing. So for a lot of players, we'll call it a 3/4 swing. And I know this from teaching a lot of lessons, it's unlikely that someone is actually going to stop at 3/4. It always ends up being a little bit longer, but if it's shorter than your standard, it should produce a slower club head speed. So there's 4 things that we can test, or there's 4 things that I'm suggesting that we test today. I'm sure there's other options. There's full swing, so your baseline numbers. There's choking down on that club. There's making a shorter backswing. And then there is the 80% or swinging slower. And what I know for myself is I don't like the swinging slower, so I didn't even bother testing it today. So I'm going to pull up some numbers here in a moment, and what we're going to look at is we're going to look at baseline speed, we're going to look at choke down on the club, and then we're going to look at 3/4 speeds. So let's go dive into the numbers. All right, so let's break down the numbers, and I want you to, I know some of you are going to comment about the different clubs there, but they were all 6 irons. I just tagged them a little bit differently. So the first thing that we have here, so these first 5 shots, these were my normal stock swing, full swing, whatever you want to call it. These were my 6 iron swings. And as you can tell, my club head speed is pretty predictable, pretty repeatable. And that average club head speed is 89.4 miles an hour. The next one that we did, which is these 5 shots here, these were the ones where I hit that choke down. So I choked down a couple of inches on the club. And then what I got in these 5 shots is there was a little bit of variability, but we look at that average club head speed was 86.7. So just a little bit more, actually almost about 3 miles an hour slower than what my stock was. And if we go down to the 5 at the bottom, this was that 3/4 club head, or a 3/4 backswing. So I felt like I was trying to make a shorter backswing. And what we see is that we saw something around 88 miles per hour. Now, the observations that I have, swinging that 3/4 swing, I was able to actually make something pretty predictable, but there wasn't that big of a difference. We were only 1 mile an hour different between me making that 3/4 swing versus my full swing, which is up here at 89 miles an hour. So if we're being honest, 1 mile an hour of club head speed, and that's before we look at contact and different things like that, that is not very different. To me, that I'm almost making something that is the exact same swing. I didn't see enough variability there. So if I have a shot that I'm trying to get 5 yards off of, I'm probably not going to do it with 1 mile an hour. So when I go to this choke down option here, I know that the variability was a little bit higher, maybe because I've been a little bit rusty on my 3/4 swing practice. But the thing that I like here is that I actually saw a noticeable difference in club head speed. And 3 miles for some people might be maybe more than what they expected. But the thing that I want to emphasize here is this was all about going through and testing it. At first, I thought for certain that 3/4 swing, where I was definitely making a shorter backswing, was definitely going to be a lot slower than it was, but it wasn't. So if we were to put carry numbers up here, if we look at my full swing at 89 and we look at my 3/4 at 88, those are almost flying the exact same distance. There's not much of variability there. If I'm in between clubs, I'm basically hitting the exact same club. But when we look at that choke down, where I was choking down on a few inches, now we're actually noticing there's something that I can do that was actually taking a couple miles an hour off of that club. So the test might be different for some of you, but I believe something that is very worthwhile is spend an hour, go through something like this and find out. Because so often, especially when we start to talk about playing in wind and different temperatures, and people start to come up with, okay, I'm really in between clubs. With a pretty quick test, you can start to find out, and obviously we could put the ball speed and the carry distances and different things like that. But the main thing that I want to focus on today is what are the different swings that you can make that actually will have a difference in the club head speed that they produce. So if I'm looking at my summary here of what I've seen, my full swing's 89, my 3/4 is 88. There's not much of a difference there. Those clubs are going the exact same distance. We look at my choke down at 87 or 86, so almost, I guess you could almost call it 3 miles an hour slower. There's actually a difference there. So really simple test. You can do this on a TrackMan, you can do it on a PRGR, but you need to understand what you do when you're in between in between distances and what length of swing or what swing you produce and how it actually affects your club head speed. All right, so as we wrap up this video, I encourage all of you to go through this test, because let's not have the guesswork when we're out on the golf course. You can do this in one session with something like a TrackMan, or even a much smaller unit. The portable PRGR portable launch monitor measures that club head speed. But I think let's commit to actually going through and finding out for you, when you're in between clubs, what is actually going to take 2 or 3 miles an hour off your club head speed that you feel comfortable with and that is predictable. Because if we start to test and you start to notice what you think is taking 5 or 6 yards off is maybe only taking 1 mile an hour off, or taking no miles an hour off, it's not actually making a difference. You're wasting golf shots on the golf course, or at least you're making bad decisions on the golf course. So let's try a couple of these, find out which one works best for you, and then that's gonna be something you're gonna take onto the golf course this year, so that when you're in between clubs, you're not panicking. You know what goes 145, you know what goes 155, and you also have a pretty educated guess on what you can get to go closer to that 150 number, if that's what the situation calls for. So I want to thank you guys again for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please post them down below, and we'll catch you on the next video.